My name is James Marohn, and I'm a gunner's mate gunner, third class, that would be an E4. But I can remember typically we'd do our patrols from the base, which would be a 24-hour patrol. It'd be 24 hours on, 24 hours off, and the other crew, a sister crew, would jump on. They just keep the boat running, and we would either do it from the base in Cat Low, and we'd relieve the others, so there's always somebody on patrol. There was never no patrol anywhere. Or they had some ships that traveled along the coast, and you go out to the ship for a week or two at a time and deploy off, where you literally climb up the side of the ship at the end of your patrol. They throw a Jacob's ladder over the side, and when the waves came up, you grabbed it at the high level and pulled yourself on. And same thing with the guys that were getting on the boat. They'd be on the Jacob's ladder waiting for the wave, and on the highest point they'd jump off into the boat. The boat would go back off on patrol, either on the coast or back up into the rivers, wherever they happened to be. But it was always kind of interesting. In bad weather, the weather there was incredible. The tides were extreme. So when you'd be riding up on these waves, you never knew what was going to happen. I do remember we had one Vietnamese interpreter with us once, and when he went up, the boat came in and crushed his leg against the side, and we just had to get away while they could pull him up. And it was really kind of, you realize how dangerous it was when that kind of stuff happened, but we'd still end up going back on patrol to get back into the rivers or wherever it happened to be. But I do remember one time it was extreme seas. We had called in to see if we could come off patrol because it was that dangerous, and they wouldn't allow us to. And it was like we couldn't possibly stay out there. We found an island out there. I think it was an island called Kansan, and we got behind it to get in the lee out of the wind and stuff, and we just radioed in where we told them we probably thought we should have been. We waited till the storm settled down because there's no way the boat could possibly survive that stuff. We had another time I was staying in the part of the weather is, again, the waves were high, and we were talking in 25 to 30 foot swells, 15-foot waves. It's unimaginable you're in one of these. And these boats are not made for that kind of weather. And I remember we came down, you could literally ride the big waves, the crest, like a surfboard. Then you go down, and we ended up stuck between two of them, and we went right down into it and blew all the windows out in the boat. Literally, we crashed head first into this other wave and took on more water than you could possibly imagine, and kind of crippled our way into really shallow water just so we could throw out an anchor. With these heavy waves, we put out 150 feet of 1.5-inch anchor rope, and it was pulling so hard it actually broke. So we were kind of foundering around out there waiting for the waves to settle down, even to get control of the boat, because with that much water in the bilge, it was like turning a bathtub. I mean, there was nothing to it. But ultimately, you know, we ended up going back off patrol because, like I said, we'd blown the windows out. They ended up modifying the swift boats after that, where they actually, all the other boats, they put in bars across the plexiglass windows so that they couldn't blow out. If it break, at least they'd stay right in there. So after that, all swift boats were modified to do that. So I have to admit, the weather was probably a lot worse than a lot of the other stuff, and went on firing runs and things like that. But we had a lot of good times where we'd go out, and if we picked a ship up on radar, we knew it was a Navy ship or something, we'd go out and mooch ice cream and steaks and stuff like off in there. And that was always the fun parts with some of them going, because it really was. It was either sheer boredom or pure adrenaline. There was no middle ground on anything. I do remember later on in the year, I think it was in June of '67, we had gone in on this river, and I can't for the life of me think of the name of it now, but it probably doesn't matter. But we went in and we drew fire from the shore. And one of the things you learn when you're in a boat is you understand the phrase sitting duck. There is no hole to go jump into, there's no tree to go behind, you are it. So you typically try to get out of range and then do any firing from there. And when we went in, remember I said the boats are always on patrol continuously, and the crew that took over on boat, at that time I happened to be on was 97 boat, and we switched crews, and they were relatively new in country. They had, I think, the curiosity, they wanted to check it out, but I don't know that. You have to talk to them. But they ended up going in a little bit too close, and they took a rocket right through the hull, and they managed to get it out far enough, but they radioed back in that they were hitting sinking. And there were not a lot of boats sunk, and all I could think was, that's my boat. You hit my boat. But we grabbed another boat, and our crew went out there, we got there, 2 other swift boats had arrived, and that boat was sinking. By the time we got there, the guys had been pulled in off the raft. I remember I tied a line to that boat, so when it sunk, there's a buoy on it, so they could find it, because the Navy came in with a ship to raise it off the bottom and get it out of there. I remember when I left country, I went through Subic Bay, and I was sitting on a barge there being repaired, so well, good for that. But that was one of those things that I have to tell you, when I got back, it took me years to remember the number on that boat. It pushed it out of my mind so far that had happened. And I remember I was talking with the counselor, and while I was talking, it just kind of flowed out like it was yesterday, and I thought, wow, where'd that come from? So anyway, we got that experience with the 97 boat going down, the 39 boat having the explosion. We used to go into, when we get a new boat officer, they always wanted to try something different, do things. And when you were on patrol, there were typically 6 people, and you split into shifts, 3 and 3. One at the helm, one on watch, and the other one just kind of taking care of whatever had to be done. And anytime you get into an area where you're going to do a board and search activity or something, which we did a lot of for boats coming in, you'd always go to general quarters where everyone would get their weapons, get their helmets on, and flak jackets or whatever it happened to be. And I think we had this one boat officer that really didn't think that was necessary. And we were up in this river, and I swear we couldn't have been 20 feet off the shore, and right on the side of the river, in this very narrow river, was this mound, and you could see this area you could shoot out of. It was obviously a place where the enemy had, and here this person was taking pictures of it. And for those of us who'd been there for a while, it was like, are you nuts? And we got up through on our life jackets. And the other part too is these swift boats did not turn easily. They were big and heavy and clumsy. So to turn them, you literally would cramp the wheel and put one engine forward, one engine aft, and turn in the same spot. Well, if someone had been in that particular bunker at that time, we'd have just been sitting ducks. And I do remember having a very loud discussion with those of us who'd been there a while, with those of us who hadn't, that what general quarters means, you're going to be prepared if something happens. But that was one of those surprises. Typically the day consisted of boarding and searching sampans and junks, and the reason that we were part of the market time operation, which is what it was called, was to stop the infiltration of guns by water, and we were extremely successful at it. And part of it was we were really aggressive, and we searched these boats. And we had this. I remember one time I felt so bad. The farmers and stuff and the fishermen in the area, everybody lived in a boat. There were no roads there in the Delta. And they were so used to being boarded and searched, it's like, oh, here the Americans come again. And we do what we can. We give them boxes of milk or vegetables or something just to make life easier for them. But they pretty much treated us routinely, which is fine because we wanted it that way. But I remember this one poor farmer, he had a relatively small sampan. By that I mean like maybe 16, 18 feet long, and he had a bunch of grain in it. And we'd get in the boat with a metal detector looking for weapons, and we pushed the metal detector in there, and all of a sudden it went off, and it's everybody, guns are ready, what's going on? Well, our guys were down there throwing the grain out of the way to see what was going on, and it was a metal patch in the bottom of the boat. And this poor farmer, what are you going to do? I felt so bad. Even to this day, 45, 50 years later, I think of that poor man. We probably ruined how much rice or whatever it was he had in there. But we did it in the best interest of the country, but it sure was a mistake. And we learned from all of it, but that was pretty much it. By the time we got started in this, and this is just in the Mekong Delta, I'm sure there are other areas, the other stories, but where we were, with all the searches that we did, and there were probably thousands. I mean, you do 10, 15 a day. And at night too, we did at night. We had floodlights and we'd go alongside, but we had pretty much shut it down. And the other part of that too was where we were, the water, except for right where the Saigon River comes out into the really deep water, the trawlers and things like that, which were the real threat, couldn't get in. But we used to follow Russian trawlers all the time. We'd see them out there. And, you know, when a trawler is out there, if they're not running in pairs with a net between them, they're probably not fishing. But we'd monitor them and follow them along the coast and stuff like that to keep them from turning in, because there was always that possibility they could transfer weapons to another smaller boat. But I have to be honest, in the entire time we were there, we never found a weapon. But there's always the stories about, I think there was the thing up in northern part, one of the bases, a thing called Skunk Hollow, I think it was, where they got into a nasty firefight with a trawler, and they recovered just tons of weapons. And that was like the beginning of the end for them bringing in weapons by water. But the whole maritime operation was set up initially to stop that, and it was extremely successful.